a litmus test for mindfulness. I wanted to go through a simple but possibly revealing test to see what your level of concentration is. I was thinking, why have someone spend 10 to 15 minutes doing this exercise? Is it worth their time? Why wouldn't someone just skip over this? Here's the reason that I felt makes this exercise worthwhile. It's meant to determine your level of concentration. Not only the ability to follow closely what is being discussed, but also lets you in on the way to observe the what in the moment. Stated slightly differently, there's a difference in assuming what's going on and actually paying attention to what is happening. The ability to concentrate and pay attention is critical for progression towards non-dual awareness. There's not any mystical experience that we're searching for. We're not needing to find something deep inside that's not readily available in this moment. Just the ability to cut through the noise of thoughts, narratives, and definitely assumptions. This exercise is really meant to be very simple, hopefully relaxing, but the rationale of the exercise is to reveal your ability to recognize the moment from the first person. Sam Harris states that recognizing non-dual awareness is about seeing what's right on the surface and not overlooking it. I want to be clear, this exercise is not meant to reveal non-dual awareness. My suspicion is that the difference between progression and getting stuck is dependent on the ability to decipher what you actually experience from what you expect to experience, which is, by definition, wrapped around thought. I also have the suspicion that a lot of people have a misconception of what experience will be like when or if they experience non-dual flow state. Possible expectations of bliss or some sort of psychedelic state. There might be a sense that when recognized, there will be no way that you will not see it for what it is, that in some way it will be self-evident. I can't overstate that the non-dual flow state can be easily overlooked. It could be missed as some ordinary state of mind. This ordinary quality could cause you to shrug it off and keep looking. So let's start by sitting on a couch. You'll see that I do basically all of my exercises with eyes open, but this one I believe is best done with your eyes closed. So put your hands on your knees, and as you look down at your hands on your knees, close your eyes. Notice the tips of your fingertips on your knees. Now, move your fingertips in gentle movements on your knees so that you feel the sensation of your fingertips as they move over your knees. I now want you to think about what you feel, the direct sensations. An initial answer might be, my fingers on my knees, but we're going to get much more specific than that. Instead of concepts of hands on knees, let's focus on the sensations: pressure, tingling, smoothness, roughness, etc. Notice both sensations from both hands on your knees. Move your hands independently and notice both sensations from both hands. See if you can distinguish the sensations from the knees standpoint versus the hand standpoint. Notice if at any point a visual thought creeps in. This might be something similar to the visual scene, just prior to closing your eyes. If that does occur, that's fine. Notice that it comes, then return to observing the sensations. Now stop moving your hands for a moment and let your hands rest on the knees. Notice if you can precisely decipher the exact location where your fingertips end and your knees begin. Or notice if there's just a cloud of sensation. Now take your hands off your knees and put them on the couch that you're sitting. Move them in a similar manner to what you did while your hands were on your knees. Small, light movements of the fingertips, back and forth. Notice any difference in the sensations compared to your knees. Notice if any visual overlay of your hands down there on a couch creeps into the exercise. Notice what the sensation feels like. I'm not asking for an answer of my fingers on the couch, rather sensations of pressure, tingling, roughness, smoothness, etc. And now, stop moving your fingers on the couch. I want you to focus on whether you can decipher where the fingertips end and where the couch starts. Can you find where you end and another object begins? The tough thing about really inspecting our experience, and this exercise is meant to hopefully start to reveal, is that we add, almost by default, a conceptual package to experience. That's typically where direct inspection ends. We bump our knee and we sit in the experience of a painful knee. Getting past conceptual packaging of an experience, we are then able to explore what we are actually experiencing. This direct interrogation is completely necessary for progress. If at any time during the exercise you noticed a kind of gist of a visual representation of your hands on the knees or your hands on the couch, kudos for recognizing how subtle thoughts can creep in and create a kind of transparent overlay to experience. Just notice that it's present and then come back to focusing on the raw sensations. So let's bring our hands back to the knees. Move the fingertips gently. As you continue to do this, I'm going to explain my experience and see if yours has any similar findings. The first thing I recognized when I closed my eyes is that my visual scene is not complete darkness. I see blunted colors and shimmering. The sun is rising, and I see a reddish orange hue kind of coloring the visual scene. I feel pressure and tingling as my fingers move over my knees. I notice a very brief, subtle visual representation of what my fingers might appear to be doing as they move gently over my knees. It's not a clear visual, as the thought is not as clear as the visual seen earlier, but I would describe it as a residue of what it might be like. It's not constant. It sort of comes and then diminishes. As I stop moving my fingers and let them rest on my knees, there is a change in the experience to just pressure. I really focus on what I feel, and I try to feel where my hands stop and my knees begin, but I can't. There's only a sort of single area of pressure that I notice. Even when the gist of a visual representation of hands on knees creeps in, it doesn't change the fact that the sensations are not delineated. The only way to delineate hands on knees would be to add a conceptual narrative to the pattern of sensation actually experienced. If I really focus on the sensations, it's clear to me that there is really no evidence that a hand with 5 digits is involved in creating the experienced sensations. Only when there's an added visual thought representation does that happen. Even if I take a moment to move each digit individually and count all 5, an added residue of a visual representation is necessary to create the concept of a hand being involved. There's no fingerness intrinsic to the experienced sensations. Can you relate to this experience? I've got a couple closing thoughts. First of all, I find eyes closed mindfulness much more difficult because for me, I've found that conceptual thoughts intrude at a greater frequency. Eyes open is a much more successful approach for me, and therefore my go-to. Next, I hope that you were able to recognize that there is actually a lot more to notice than hands were moving on knees or hands were moving on the couch. Our direct experience is very different. Specifically, if you were able to recognize that self-other distinctions are not as clear as we might have initially thought, that recognition is actually an important one. And finally, I hope that you were able to notice that intermittent overlays of visual representations can creep into experience, and furthermore, were recognized as such. If you kind of get what I'm talking about, I think I would call that a positive outcome with this exercise. And here's your homework assignment. While you're watching TV this week on the couch, with your eyes open, watching the game or a movie, I want you to place your hands on the couch and move your fingers gently. I want you to focus on the sensations and try your hardest to find the delineation between your fingers and the couch. Notice if you can even confirm, just based on the sensory experience, that something approximating a hand would even be guessed to be the cause of the sensations noticed, if you didn't look down and actually see a hand.